Hey guys, tonight we take a journey back to the 11th century, a time when Europe was in chaos and the Holy Land was the ultimate prize. Picture yourself you're in the middle of a dusty European town, your feet sore from the long days, the smell of sweat and unwashed clothes in the air. You're just one among thousands of others, all moved by the call to arms from Pope Urban II. It's a journey filled with ambition, glory, and a promise of redemption. But let's be real, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're from and what time it is over there. Let's see how far we can take this little adventure. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It all starts with Pope Urban II. In 1095, he stands before a crowd at the Council of Clermont, and with fiery words, he calls on the people of Christendom to take up the cross and reclaim the Holy Land from the Muslims. You can feel the intensity in the air, the weight of his words. People begin to weep, and a sense of duty washes over them. It's not just a wear, it's a holy mission. At least, that's what they believe. You feel that twinge of excitement, of hope after all. This is your chance to right the wrongs of the world. As you gather your belongings, you know that this is more than just a march. It's an endless journey through unknown lands. You wonder about the dangers ahead. Will you ever see home again? But there's something intoxicating about the idea of fighting for a cause so grand. Historians still argue whether Pope Urban truly understood the consequences of his call. Was it a religious mission or a way to unite a divided Europe? It's a question that lingers in the back of your mind, but for now, you push it aside. You've got a long journey ahead, and it's already begun. The roads are rough. You travel in large groups, surrounded by people you don't know, farmers, knights, women, children, all marching for the same goal. The air is thick with the promise of adventure and, for some, the chance to escape their everyday struggles. But the reality sets in quickly. The dust is relentless, and the hunger gnaws at your stomach. The landscape is vast, unyielding, and filled with dangers. Along the way, your thoughts are filled with both excitement and doubt after all. You've never seen a battle like the one you're heading toward. And so the journey begins. But you're not alone. There are thousands of you, all with the same goal, yet each with their own reasons for joining the crusade. Some believe in the spiritual rewards that come with it, while others just want to escape the monotony of life back home. You can't help but wonder how many of you will make it to Jerusalem, who've been traveling for what feels like an eternity, and the road ahead doesn't seem to end. The landscape has changed, no longer the familiar fields of Europe, but arid plains stretching out endlessly. The heat of the sun bears down on you, the scent of dry earth, and the occasional campfire smoke filling your senses. You trudge forward, tired, hungry, and slightly delirious. But there's no turning back. You push on, step by step, with the sound of thousands of boots around you. The closer you get to the Holy Land, the more you feel the weight of the journey pressing down on your shoulders. Along the way, you encounter towns and villages where locals look at you with a mixture of curiosity and caution. You can't help but notice how different their lives are from yours. It's as if they've never known the world you come from. It's hard to imagine that your fate is now tied to theirs, that the same earth beneath your feet will soon feel the heat of battle. The journey to the Holy Land isn't a smooth one. It's a long trek across hostile terrain, filled with bandits, disease, and the occasional dust storm. You try to keep your spirits up, but the reality of the crusade sets in. This isn't just about fighting for a cause, it's about survival. You're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering when the next attack will come. You hear stories of other crusaders who've fallen to illness or robbers, and you can't help but wonder if you'll meet the same fate. Historians still argue whether the initial wave of crusaders was truly prepared for the harsh conditions they faced. Some say they were naive, believing that the journey would be a simple one. Others claim that the leaders misled them, painting a picture of a glorious adventure. The truth? It was somewhere in between. No one was truly ready for the hardships ahead, and yet, here you are marching onward, driven by something greater than fear. In the distance, you begin to spot the first signs of the Byzantine Empire, something familiar, a hint that civilization is near. The banners of the empire flutter in the breeze, and you hear tales of the Greek soldiers who will help guide you through the next leg of the journey. But just as hope rises, so does the doubt. Are you truly ready to face what's waiting for you? Or will this journey be your last? You continue forward, knowing that with each step, you're moving closer to your fate. You've reached Nicaea. The air feels different now, thicker, heavier with the weight of what's to come. The city stands before you, its walls looming large and imposing. But you're not here to admire the architecture. You're here for one thing: victory. The Crusaders have gathered in force, eager to prove their mettle. But you can't ignore the nervous tension that lingers in the air. The moment of truth is fast approaching, and there's a gnawing feeling in your stomach that tells you this won't be as easy as they've promised. The city of Nicaea is the first major hurdle on this long journey. The Crusaders must breach its walls, and the task is a daunting one. You can hear the clanging of swords, the screams of the wounded, and the shouts of men pushing themselves past their limits. You march alongside them, your armor heavy and uncomfortable, each step feeling like an eternity. You don't know if you're ready for this, but there's no turning back now. The siege begins, and you find yourself caught up in the chaos of it all. Siege warfare is no clean affair. It's exhausting, dirty, and full of surprises. The constant pounding of the siege engines echoes through the air, but it's the waiting that gets to you. Hours stretch into days, the food supply dwindling, and morale takes a hit. You're not fighting to conquer the city so much as you're fighting to stay sane, to endure. Historians still argue over the role of the Byzantines in this siege. Some claim they played a pivotal role in the Crusaders' success, while others insist they were more of a hindrance than a help. Regardless, it's clear that Nicaea represents more than just a physical battle. It's a battle of wills, of determination, and of survival. You wonder how many of you will leave this battlefield with your lives intact. And then, after what feels like an eternity, the gates of Nicaea finally open. The city surrenders, and the Crusaders pour in. There's a strange mix of relief and bitterness in the air. The battle was won, but the cost of it is written on every face you see. You've made it this far, but at what cost? You can barely grasp the magnitude of the victory you've survived your first taste of battle. But how much longer can you keep going? Jerusalem. It's been weeks since the fall of Nicaea, but this city, the ultimate prize now, looms before you. The sight of it fills you with both awe and dread. This is what you've been fighting for, what you've risked everything for. But there's something haunting about it, something unsettling in the air as the Crusaders gather around. The walls of Jerusalem are imposing, ancient, and unyielding. You can already feel the weight of the coming siege on your shoulders, and you wonder if this is where your journey will end. The city is surrounded. You're not alone far from it. There's an army of Crusaders just like you, each of them driven by a mix of ambition, faith, and desperation. For many, this is the culmination of their journey, the moment when they can finally say they've achieved something, that all the suffering and struggle have led to this moment. But for you, it's not so simple. You feel the terror creeping in. You can't help but think of all the things that could go wrong. Will you survive this siege? Will you make it to Jerusalem's walls and see the city fall? The siege begins in earnest. The Crusaders' siege towers are brought forward, the battering rams are readied, and the catapults begin their relentless bombardment. The sound of war fills the air, deafening, unending. There's a certain madness to it all. You're part of a massive machine of destruction, pushing forward with every ounce of strength you have left. Historians still debate the strategy behind the siege of Jerusalem. Some say it was well executed, others claim that the Crusaders were ill-prepared and overly aggressive. One thing is for certain, though the siege was brutal, the Crusaders faced the harsh realities of fighting in a city as fortified as Jerusalem. But there's no turning back. The prize is within reach, and you can feel the anticipation building with every passing day. The days of siege drag on, the food supplies dwindling, the heat unbearable. You're covered in dust and sweat, your body aching from the strain of continuous battle. Yet, the thought of what lies beyond the walls keeps you going. Each night, you dream of the city of the riches, the glory, the salvation that awaits. But when the day comes and you stand before the gates once more, you wonder what if the cost is higher than you ever imagined. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, Jerusalem's gates fall. You've done it. You've taken the city. But the triumph is short-lived. The Crusaders pour into the city, and what follows is something that will be etched into history forever. A massacre. Bodies pile up in the streets, the air thick with the scent of blood and iron. You stand amidst it all, too exhausted to feel anything but numbness. Historians still argue whether it was justified, whether the bloodshed was necessary to claim the Holy Land, or if it was a grotesque overreach. For you, it's not about that anymore. It's about survival. You've seen too much, and now you simply want to rest. The aftermath of the conquest is haunting. Jerusalem, once a symbol of holy purity, now lies in ruins, its streets stained with the blood of countless lives. You can barely comprehend what's happened. Everything feels like a blur. The heat, the dust, the endless noise of battle have all merged into a dull, overwhelming sensation. You're standing in the midst of a city that, only days ago, seemed untouchable. Now, it's yours, or at least, you think it is. As you move through the city, the weight of the carnage becomes undeniable. The streets are filled with Crusaders looting, some celebrating, others simply staring at the destruction. You can't help but notice the stark contrast between the victory they had imagined and the reality they now face. The air is thick with the stench of death, and it hangs around every corner. It's a victory, yes, but one that's hollow that leaves you questioning the cost of such triumph. Historians still argue about the nature of the massacre that followed Jerusalem's capture. Some say it was justified, that the Muslim defenders had it coming after years of occupation. Others argue that it was an act of savage brutality, one that stained the very purpose of the crusade. For you, though, none of that matters. What matters is that you've survived. You've made it this far, and now the future seems uncertain. What is there left to fight for in a city that's been so thoroughly claimed? For the Crusaders who came with hope of salvation, the reality of their conquest is becoming clear. The streets are filled with the broken bodies of both the enemy and civilians, Muslims, Jews, all victims of the same slaughter. It's easy to convince yourself that you're fighting for something greater, something divine. But standing in the middle of this destroyed city, you begin to question it. Was it worth it? What has been gained here, other than death and destruction? In the days that follow, you and your fellow Crusaders try to rebuild, but it's hard to shake the feeling that something has been lost, perhaps something irreplaceable. The sense of divine purpose that motivated you in the beginning has faded, replaced by a grim reality. The city that was once the holy grail of your mission is now just another place to guard, another place to claim. Jerusalem's significance has been stripped of its holiness, and all that remains is a shattered shell of what it once was. You sit among your fellow Crusaders, tired and broken, as they try to make sense of what has just happened. Some talk of staying, of building a kingdom here in Jerusalem. Others, like you, wonder if it's time to leave, to go back to the life you once knew. But that's not so simple, is it? Once you've been part of something like this, there's no going back. The days following the capture of Jerusalem drag on slowly. You had expected a sense of peace to settle over you after such a monumental victory, but instead, a strange emptiness fills the void. The air is still heavy with the smell of blood and smoke, the stench clinging to your skin, your clothes, your very thoughts. The city, once a beacon of hope and faith, now feels like an oppressive weight around your neck. You try to find moments of respite, small pockets of time to gather your thoughts, to breathe. The sun beats down relentlessly, and you find yourself longing for the cool shade of the trees back home. But you're not home, and the longer you stay in Jerusalem, the more you realize how little you truly know about the land you've come to conquer. You don't speak the language, and the people you've supposedly liberated seem distant, their lives continuing as if nothing has changed. There's talk among the Crusaders' voices questioning what comes next. Some are eager to settle, to build fortifications and kingdoms in this foreign land. Others, like you, are starting to grow restless. The victory is no longer enough to fill the void. You begin to question the point of it all. What have you gained, really? Jerusalem is yours, but it feels like a hollow victory. The promise of glory and salvation now seems far away, a dream that slipped through your fingers. Historians still debate the true significance of the First Crusade's success. Some say that the Crusaders were driven by faith, others by ambition and greed. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. For you, the reality is something simpler. You've fought, you've bled, you've survived. But what now? What purpose does your continued presence here serve? The answer isn't easy to come by, and the more you think about it, the less certain you are. Meanwhile, the days blur together. The sounds of Jerusalem, the chatter of the soldiers, the clinking of armor, all seem to become a dull background noise to the weight of your thoughts. You see men polishing their swords, sharpening their weapons, but you can't help but wonder if they're preparing for another battle, or if they're just filling the hours with meaningless tasks. The true battle, it seems, has already been lost. One evening, as the sun sets over the city, you find yourself gazing at the horizon. The sky is streaked with shades of pink and orange, a soft reminder of the world outside Jerusalem's walls. You think back to the journey, the long road, the battles fought, the faces of men who have come and gone. But it's hard to remember why it all mattered now. What is the point of this conquest, this endless war for a city that has lost its luster? You don't have an answer, but you know one thing, for sure, you're not the same person who marched into Jerusalem months ago. The city has changed you, the war has changed you. And as you sit there in the fading light, you begin to wonder if there's any way back. Days pass, and the air in Jerusalem feels heavier than before. The thrill of victory has long since faded, replaced by a sense of uncertainty. As the Crusaders settle into their newly claimed land, the discussions turn toward what comes next. It's strange. Jerusalem is a victory, but it's not the grand final triumph everyone had imagined. You thought the end of the battle would bring closure, but instead, it feels like the beginning of something even more complicated. The streets of the city, once filled with the sounds of battle, are now eerily quiet. The remnants of the siege remain: broken walls, charred buildings, the occasional cry from those left behind. As you move through the city, you see Crusaders in their armor, now more concerned with securing their position than with any semblance of glory. The once grand mission of reclaiming the Holy Land now seems to be reduced to a drawn-out occupation. You wonder how long this will last, though long, until the weight of this conquest crushes all of you under its weight. You're not alone in your feelings of doubt. As the weeks go by, whispers spread among the Crusaders. Some are beginning to question the mission, whether it was truly ordained by God, or if it was just another act of human ambition. Historians still debate the role of religion in the Crusades. Was it a genuine religious endeavor, or merely an extension of European politics and greed? In the quiet moments between battles, the soldiers themselves start to ask the same question. Some of the more devout Crusaders continue to cling to the idea of divine purpose. They speak of the glory of God, of the rewards awaiting them in heaven as they stand guard over the broken city. For you, though, it's harder to reconcile. The bloodshed that you've witnessed, both your own and that of the enemy has, clouded any clear sense of divine guidance. You can't help but wonder, how much of this was truly about faith, and how much was about power? And then, news comes. The Second Crusade is being called. A new wave of crusaders, fresh faces filled with the same fervor you once had, are preparing to march. The Holy Land is still in turmoil, and the call to reclaim more lands rings out once again. You hear the news, and while the others begin to rally behind the idea, you can't bring yourself to feel the same enthusiasm. The fire that once burned within you has been smothered by the reality of war. You feel no excitement for the prospect of more bloodshed, only the quiet fatigue of a long, drawn-out struggle. You sit in the camp one night, your thoughts wandering back to the road that led you here. It's hard to remember the person you were before the Crusades. That naive soldier who marched off with dreams of glory now feels like a distant memory. You wonder how long it will be before the next wave of crusaders finds themselves feeling the same way you do now. How long before they too start to question the cost of it all? Historians still argue whether the Second Crusade would have been as ill-fated as the first if it weren't for the lingering effects of the initial conquest. Some say the damage was done, the spirit of the Crusades had already begun to fracture under the weight of its own contradictions. Others claim that the failure was due to poor leadership and logistical mistakes. But you, having lived through it, know that the truth is far more complicated. For you, it was never just about battle, it was about survival, about finding meaning in a mission that had lost its direction. The arrival of the Second Crusade is nothing like the first. There's no grand anticipation, no rush of energy as thousands of eager crusaders gather to take up arms. Instead, there's a quiet acceptance among the men who have already fought tired eyes, sluggish movements, a sense of weariness that cannot be shaken off. It's hard to muster enthusiasm for another war when the first one has already drained you of so much. You see the new recruits young, hopeful faces full of energy and determination, and you can't help but wonder how long it will take before they, too, grow tired of the endless march. As the new crusaders prepare for battle, you feel like a ghost among them. Your armor feels heavier now, the weight of the past hanging over you with every step. You try to join in the preparations, to throw yourself into the new mission, but your mind keeps drifting back to the first Crusades siege of Jerusalem, the massacre that followed. The images of the bloodshed are burned into your memory, and you can't forget them, no matter how hard you try. The Second Crusade doesn't feel like the same war. It feels smaller, somehow less grand, less noble. Historians still argue about why it failed. Some point to the lack of a clear goal, others blame the infighting between the Crusaders and their allies. But for you, it's not about the reasons. It's about the inevitable sense of defeat that creeps in when you least expect it. The Crusaders are once again fighting for a city that has already cost them so much, and the toll is beginning to show. The excitement of the First Crusade has long since dissipated, replaced by a quiet acceptance of a war that seems never-ending. You march on, your footsteps matching the rhythm of the others. But your heart isn't in it. The camaraderie you once felt with your fellow Crusaders has faded. There's a distance between you and them now, a gulf that can't be crossed. You try to remember what it was like to believe in the mission, to feel that sense of divine purpose that once drove you. But now, it all seems so distant, so hard to grasp. As you approach the battlefield once more, the reality of the situation becomes all too clear. You're no longer fighting for a cause, you're fighting for survival. You fight because there's nothing else to do. You fight because the crusade has become a cycle that you can't escape. The hope that you once carried has been replaced by something more primal. The need to stay alive, to make it through another battle, another day. The Second Crusade is a series of failures. Cities are lost, allies are betrayed, and the Crusaders slowly begin to fracture. You watch from the sidelines as hope fades into frustration, as men who once marched with pride begin to question their loyalty. You realize that the crusade has become less about religion and more about something darker, a game of politics, of power, of men struggling to maintain their place in a war that has long since lost its meaning. The once grand vision of the Crusades, the promise of salvation and glory, has crumbled. It's hard to even remember why you're still here. The Crusades have shifted from a religious mission to a bloody, futile struggle that never seems to end. You wonder how much longer you can keep going, how much longer anyone can keep going. The air feels heavier than ever, and you know that soon the war will come to an end, but at what cost? The failure of the Second Crusade marks a turning point for the Crusaders. There's no fanfare, no grand declaration of defeat, it just slowly settles in. The bitter realization that Jerusalem and all the bloodshed associated with it was not the victory they'd hoped for hangs in the air. You, like many others, begin to question everything. The promise of the crusade was simple at first. Take back the Holy Land, fight for faith, and gain eternal glory. But now, all that remains are broken men, empty hands, and a land that never quite belonged to you. The battles have taken their toll on everyone. The new crusaders are exhausted, their faces drawn with weariness. The seasoned veterans, like yourself, are hollowed out by the constant struggle. What started as a fervent religious mission has evolved into a series of military failures. You can't help but wonder, what was the point of it all? The promise of salvation that Pope Urban II preached so passionately now seems like a distant memory. For many of the men around you, there's no hope left. Just the endless grind of war with no clear end in sight. As the Crusaders retreat and regroup, the leaders start to bicker. The alliances that held the crusade together begin to fracture. There's talk of betrayal, of leaders who failed to deliver, of decisions that have led them nowhere. You watch as the unity that once bound the Crusaders falls apart. What once seemed like a united front, a collective mission, now feels like a fractured mess of egos and ambitions. Each man seems to be looking out for himself, with little regard for the grand cause that once seemed so important. You begin to wonder if the crusade ever really was about faith. Was it just a front for political power, for control of lands and wealth? The more you think about it, the more it feels like the Crusades were never really about what they claimed to be. The banners of the cross fly high, but the motivations of the men carrying them are anything but pure. You try to reconcile your actions with your faith, but it's hard. The men you fought alongside, some of them, you now realize, were motivated by greed, by power, by personal gain. Faith may have been the initial spark, but it was quickly overshadowed by human ambition. As you settle into the post-crusade life, there's a strange sense of finality in the air. The Second Crusade has failed, but there's no one to mourn the loss. There are no heroes to honor, no glorious triumphs to celebrate. The reality of the crusade has been stripped bare, and what you're left with is the cold truth. The Holy Land, once a symbol of divine purpose, now feels like a Berdina place where dreams died, where men were lost to a cause that never had a clear purpose to begin with. As you walk away from the ruins of the crusade, you wonder what it all means. Was it worth it? Was the suffering and loss justified? Or was it just a waste of life, a pointless struggle that ended in nothing? You can't find an answer. All you know is that you've been changed, in ways you can't explain. The war is over, but the scars it left behind remain, and you'll carry them for the rest of your life. As the Crusaders make their way back to Europe, the mood is one of exhaustion and quiet defeat. The triumphant return they had imagined parades, celebrations, the spoils of war never materializes. Instead, they trudge home, broken in body and spirit. The Holy Land that they fought so desperately for feels like a distant dream now. What did they achieve? Nothing. The victory they had hoped for is as elusive as the horizon they left behind. There are no songs to sing, no banners to fly, only the slow march back to a home that no longer feels like home. The faces of the men around you tell the story. There are no smiles, no words of victory, just hollow looks, haunted by the memories of what they've seen, what they've done. The faces of fallen comrades still linger in your thoughts, their names etched into your mind. The men who started this journey with hope and faith have returned as something else entirely tired, disillusioned, and scarred. Historians still argue about the true impact of the Crusades. Some say that the wars brought Europe closer together, that they helped shape the course of history. Others claim that they were nothing but a senseless waste of life. You, however, know the truth of it. There's no clear answer. What you lived through, what you saw, what you experienced can't be summed up in any textbook. The Crusades weren't just about land, religion, or glory. They were about the human cost of war, about the sacrifices made and the lives lost in the name of a cause that was never fully understood. As you cross back into Europe, the landscape feels strangely unfamiliar. It's the same world, yet it's different. You look at the people going about their daily lives, unaware of the horrors that lie just beyond their borders, and you wonder how they can be so oblivious. How can they live their lives so calmly when you and your fellow crusaders have witnessed the worst that humanity can offer? The innocence of life back home feels almost alien now. You can't shake the feeling that you've crossed into a new existence, one where nothing will ever be the same again. The soldiers who fought in the Crusades are welcomed home with little fanfare. There are no parades, no medals, no honor. In fact, many are forgotten altogether, their deeds lost to time. The glory they had hoped for fades away, replaced by the stark reality of returning to a life that doesn't know or care what they've been through. The world moves on, as it always does, and the Crusaders are left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. You realize as you walk through the streets of Europe that the Crusades are already fading from memory. The future seems to have little interest in what you've endured, in what you've sacrificed. The stories of the Crusades will be told, but they will be distorted, simplified, forgotten over time. The truth of what happened, the struggles, the losses, the confusion will be lost in the fog of history, and yet the scars will remain. You have survived, but it's hard to feel like much of a survivor. There's no sense of pride in what you've done, no feeling of victory. Instead, there's a quiet emptiness, a question that echoes in your mind. Was it worth it? The return to Europe is nothing like you imagined. It's a quiet, unceremonious affair. The people seem to go about their business, unaware or indifferent to the hardships you and your fellow Crusaders have endured. The banners you once marched under, full of fervor and hope, are now just memories, faded and tattered. The cities are as you left them, no grand welcome, no cheers of triumph. The streets are filled with the same faces you knew before, their lives unaltered by the wars that have raged across the world. You can't help but feel like an outsider in your own land. The familiar sights of home cobblestone streets, the distant chime of church bells seem alien to you now. The simplicity of life back home contrasts sharply with the battles you've fought, the cities you've seen fall, and the men who have died beside you. The quiet peace of Europe feels out of place after the chaos of war. It's a strange dissonance, like trying to return to a life you can no longer fit into. You've changed in ways that those around you will never understand. As you try to adjust to life after the Crusades, you realize how much the war has cost you. You've seen things, done things that you can't forget. The faces of the fallen, the screams of battle, the weight of your sword in your hand, it all lingers, even as you try to return to the mundane tasks of everyday life. The world hasn't stopped, but you've been marked by what you've lived through. You feel like a ghost in your own world. Historians still argue about the legacy of the Crusades. Some see it as a turning point for Europe, a moment that shaped the future of the continent. Others view it as a tragic failure, a waste of life, with little to show for it. For you, it's hard to say what the Crusades have really achieved. Sure, there were battles won, cities captured, and glory claimed, but at what cost? The human cost of the Crusades is something that can never be measured, and it's something you carry with you every day. Life moves on, as it always does. The people around you continue with their lives, oblivious to the trauma you carry. Some crusaders have turned to religion for solace, others to drink, and some simply withdraw into themselves, lost in the memories of what they've seen. You find yourself somewhere in between, searching for meaning, searching for peace, but never quite finding it. The past lingers, and it's impossible to shake the feeling that you've left a part of yourself behind in those foreign lands. The Crusades are over, but the war isn't over for you. The echoes of battle follow you, even in the quiet moments. The blood, the violence, the sense of hopelessness, it all stays with you, a shadow that you can't escape. You've returned home, but it's not the home you remember. Everything is different now, and you can't help but wonder if anything will ever be the same. You try to move on, but the scars are deeper than you expected. The weight of the Crusades, the knowledge of what you've lost, presses down on you, and you wonder if you'll ever find a way to let it go. The world around you is busy rebuilding, moving forward, but for you, the past is always there, always just behind you, a reminder of what you've been through. It's been months since you returned from the Crusades, yet the world around you feels more foreign than ever. You've seen men return from war before, but none of them carry the same weight as you. They speak of the battles they fought, the glory they earned, but their words ring hollow to you now. You can't find the joy they once had in recounting their victories. What is glory really when it's stained with blood? What is honor when it's built on the suffering of others? The questions keep swirling in your mind, unresolved and gnawing at your conscience. In the quiet of your room, you find yourself replaying the events over and over, the faces of the fallen, the cries of men on the battlefield. You think about the men who once fought by your side, so many of them are gone now. Some died in battle, some from disease, others in the wake of the conquest. You remember their faces, their voices, the way they laughed and fought like they had something to prove, and then they were gone, just like that. You wonder if they ever questioned their purpose in the same way you do now. The city of Jerusalem that you once fought so hard to claim, what does it mean now? The land that was supposed to be a beacon of salvation is just another scar on the earth, a place stained by violence and death. And what of the promise of redemption? The thought that you were fighting for a divine cause, has it been shattered by the harsh reality of war? The more you think about it, the harder it is to hold on to that belief. Historians often speak of the Crusades as if they were a singular event, a chapter in the grand book of history. They talk of battles won, cities conquered, and leaders who achieved greatness. But for you, it's different. The Crusades weren't a story of victory or glory. They were a tale of human suffering, of misplaced ambition and false promises. You were caught in the middle of it all, a pawn in a larger game that you never fully understood, and now you have to live with the consequences. The men around you don't understand. They carry on with their families, their farms, their lives. They rebuild, but they do it without ever really acknowledging the cost of what was lost. They don't talk about the bloodshed, the nightmares, the sorrow that still lingers in the hearts of those who fought. You can't seem to escape it. It's with you every time you close your eyes, every time you hear a familiar sound, every time you breathe. You wonder how long it will take before it fades away, or if it ever will. You try to put it behind you, to move on, but the truth is that you can't. The war is still with you. It shapes your every thought, your every action. You're not the same person who left Europe all those months ago. That person so full of hope, so full of faith, has been replaced by someone different. Someone hardened by the horrors of war. Someone who knows that glory and honor are just words, and that they mean nothing in the face of the destruction they've caused. The Crusades have ended, but for you, the war continues. It's a war within yourself, a battle for your own soul. The question still lingers, was it worth it? And you don't have an answer. You don't know if you ever will. As the seasons change, you find yourself slowly re-entering life, though it feels like you're moving through a dream, detached from reality. You find yourself standing on familiar ground, but you can't quite recognize it anymore. The people around you move as if nothing has happened, their lives continue in their own rhythm, and they expect you to fit back into yours. But you can't. You've seen too much, lived through too much. It's as if a part of you has been left behind, lost somewhere in the chaos of battle and in the aftermath of the Crusades. You try to smile, to laugh with them, but it feels forced, hollow. There are days when the silence is unbearable. You go through the motions working, eating, sleeping, but your mind drifts. You sit by the fire, staring into the flames, and your thoughts wander back to the places you've been. The heat of the desert, the dust in the air, the endless marching, and always the battle. The endless battle, the faces of those who have fallen, those who fought beside you, those who never made it home. It haunts you, these faces. You see them when you wake, in the quiet moments before sleep, and in the crowds you pass on the streets. They're with you, always. In the evenings, when the world is quieter, you find yourself looking at the stars. The night sky is vast, stretching far beyond the reaches of Jerusalem, beyond the fields you've marched across, beyond the blood and the pain. For a moment, you almost feel at peace. The stars remind you of a simpler time, a time before war, a time when you could just be a man, not a soldier. You close your eyes and remember what it was like to dream. But then, the memories of the Crusades creep back in, and the dream fades. Historians debate the legacy of the Crusades, the lessons learned, the changes brought about. Some say it was a turning point for Europe, while others argue it was a futile conflict with little gain. But for you, the answer isn't so simple. The Crusades have changed you in ways you can't explain. They've stripped you of your illusions, left you with a profound sense of loss that never quite fades. You wonder how many others feel the same way, how many others carry the weight of the past in their hearts, but don't speak of it. The years drag on, and the world moves forward. New wars arise, new challenges emerge. You see others take up arms, following the same path you once did. You hear about the rise of new powers, the shifting of alliances, and you wonder if the cycle will ever truly end. You see young men, full of ambition, setting out on their own crusades, perhaps not for Jerusalem, but for glory, or wealth, or whatever they believe is worth fighting for. And you wonder, will they ever learn the truth? Will they ever see the consequences of their choices as you did? You try to push the thought aside, to focus on your own life, your own future. But the war, the memories, they stay with you. The people around you can never understand what you've been through, what you've seen. They look at you, and they see someone who made it through, someone who survived. But they don't see the scars you carry, the weight of the past that drags behind you. And so, you continue. Life moves forward, and you try to move with it. You rebuild, not just your life, but yourself. It's not easy, and it's not quick, but you try. You try to find meaning in the quiet moments, in the mundane tasks that once felt so unimportant. You try to find peace, but it always seems just out of reach. Perhaps it's a lie to believe you can ever truly be at peace after something like the Crusades. Perhaps, like you, peace is a thing that changes. It's a thing that can never be fully reclaimed. The years pass, and you've become someone different from the person who left for the Crusades. The young soldier, full of dreams of glory, has faded away, replaced by someone who understands the true cost of war, someone who knows that honor and victory are often just empty words tossed around to justify the unimaginable suffering that war leaves behind. There's no longer any romanticizing of the past, no more illusions about what the Crusades were or what they achieved. The world that seemed so full of possibility before you marched off to battle now seems much smaller, much harsher. You've settled into life again, or at least as close to it as you can. The war is over, but the memories, the aftermath, it lingers. You've tried to bury it, to forget about the bloodshed and the death, but it doesn't work. The past never fully fades. It becomes a part of you, something you carry with you, whether you want to or not. You try to focus on the mundane working, the land, helping in the village, but your thoughts always wander back to the days when you marched with the Crusaders, to the cities you fought for, to the battlefields that are now nothing more than distant memories. Sometimes, you hear stories of other men who returned from the Crusades, their own lives equally marked by the experiences they've been through. Some have found solace in their faith, while others have turned inward, retreating from the world around them. Some try to forget, to move on as if nothing ever happened. But no matter what they choose, there's always that same haunting realization: nothing is ever the same again. The Crusades have changed you, and no matter how much time passes, you will never be the same. Occasionally, you meet men who are still full of that same fire, the same youthful zeal that you once had. They talk about new battles, new conquests, and you wonder what drives them. Are they, too, running from something, trying to fill that empty space left behind by the war? Or are they truly convinced that the next fight will be different, that it will bring them the honor and glory they crave? You don't know. Maybe you'll never understand. But one thing is certain: you've seen enough to know that war is never the answer. No matter what cause it's fighting for, no matter what banner it's carried under, it's always the same: destruction, suffering, loss. The world around you changes, and yet it remains the same. The echoes of war fade from the public consciousness, but for you, they remain ever present. The faces of the fallen, the men who fought beside you, the enemies who became victims will never leave your mind. They are a part of you now, just as the Crusades are. One day, when the sky is clear and the sun is setting, you find yourself looking back on it all. The long journey, the battles, the bloodshed, and you wonder if it was all for nothing. The Holy Land remains contested, Jerusalem has fallen into the hands of others, and all that's left are memories. But then you think about those who came after you, the new generations that will take up arms for causes they believe in, and you realize that the Crusades, though long over, are not truly done. They live on in the hearts of the men who will follow the same path, who will march toward the same empty promises, and you wonder if they too will ever learn the truth. You've returned, but you will never truly leave the Crusades behind. It's a part of you now, just as the world is. The past and the present are tangled together, and you, a soldier who once believed in a mission, have become a man who has seen the costs, the tolls, and the emptiness. In the end, that is the true legacy of the Crusades: not glory, not honor, not victory, but the knowledge that war leaves behind scars that no one can escape. The years continue to stretch on, and you find yourself thinking less about the battles, the men who fell beside you, and the land you once fought for. The Crusades are now distant memories, a story you've told and retold in your mind, shaping it into something that no longer feels entirely real. The faces of your comrades, the ones who lived and the ones who died, are becoming less clear. The lines between who you were before the Crusades and who you are now are starting to blur. It's as if you've stepped out of one life and into another, the transition so gradual that you almost don't notice it happening. Life moves on. The villages you've known have flourished again, the crops have grown, and people have started families. The world seems to keep turning, unaffected by the weight of the past. You watch it all unfold around you, other men raising children, young men training to become soldiers, women making homes, families building futures. It's almost like nothing happened. The Crusades are now just something you read about in books, something that happened long before your time. The world has moved on, but you're not sure if you have. There are moments, however, when the weight of it all still presses down on you. You wake up in the middle of the night, the quiet of your room suddenly unbearable, and for a moment, it's as if the past rushes back, filling the space around you. The sounds of the siege, the screams, the clash of swords, the sweat and blood, it's all there, as real as the night sky above you. You can almost taste the dust of Jerusalem on your lips, feel the heat of the desert on your skin. You've been home for a long time now, but you still feel like you're standing on the edge of something you can't quite grasp. The war has ended, but you know it will never fully end for you. It will always be with you like a shadow that never quite disappears, no matter how far you run. You try to put it behind you, to focus on what's in front of you, but it's difficult. How do you move forward when the past is still so present, still so real? And then, in the quiet moments, when you're alone with your thoughts, you realize something. The Crusades may have ended, but they've shaped you in ways that are impossible to undo. You're not the same person you were when you set out, not the same man who marched through those foreign lands, so full of hope and ambition. You've been broken and remade, shaped by the things you've seen and done. It's a harsh truth, but it's the one that has to be accepted. Historians may argue about the reasons behind the Crusades, about what was gained or lost, about the legacy they left behind. But for you, the legacy is personal. It's the knowledge that you can never unsee the horrors of war. It's the understanding that glory and honor are often just illusions, and that the true cost of war is paid by those who survive it. The past is always with you. It's always there, just beneath the surface, waiting to rise up and remind you of what was lost, of what was gained, and of what can never be fully understood. As you sit in the quiet of your room, watching the sunset over the horizon, you feel the weight of it all one last time. You've survived the Crusades, you've made it through, lived to tell the tale. But the story is yours to carry now, forever. The Crusades may have ended, but for you, they never truly will. And that, perhaps, is the greatest cost of all. End of script. Sweet dreams.